Hey everyone, this is Daniel, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to use the Power Automate Run Only feature with Outlook and SharePoint. So I'll first start by walking you through how to build a SharePoint item level Power Automate flow and focusing on what you should and should not do. Next, I'll show you how to leverage this run only feature that comes with Power Automate and show you how you can go and share it with the user, groups, or even leverage the SharePoint list item permission. And finally, I'll show you how you can go ahead and change the Outlook connectors account so that the emails come from the correct account, not just for the person who built the flow, but for everybody else, including the users. Now, this is a question that comes up several times. I'm also seeing it being asked in the community again and again, and that is why I'm building you this video to walk you through it step by step. So stick around, this is very important. But first, here's my intro video. So let's start by building a SharePoint item level flow because it's important that we get this foundation right because everything else, including the run only feature, builds on top of this. And if this is brand new to you, let the name itself be a clue that what we're doing is building a SharePoint item level flow. That means is that for every one specific item in my whole list over here, I can go ahead and select any one of these items and run a flow really specific to that item level. Now, when you go and build these Power Automates flow, your first natural instinct would be directly to go into Power Automate, go and click on a new flow, hoping that it's one of these type of triggers, and you start building it. And therein lies the problem. Because when you start building it from this way, your flow logic will not be sound and it does not show up over here. And by here, I mean is you click on the item, you click on the ellipses, you click on automate, and it will not show up over here. That's usually the first problem that people have. That's the first question that comes up when people say, hi, I built this item level Power Automate flow. It's tied to a specific SharePoint list. I go to the list, I don't see it over here. That's really the problem. Because what you want to do is you want to now come to the SharePoint list and build the flow directly from there. And that's what I want to show you. So here we go. I am now in my SharePoint list. This is SharePoint Online list. On the top in the menu section, I click on Integrate, I click on Power Automate, and I click on Create a Flow. Now on the right side, a whole bunch of options come out, but go ahead and select Show More. And it's usually way at the bottom. And what I'm looking for is complete a custom action for the selected item. That's the clue. It's a selected item, and we're going to build some custom actions. That's the one that you want to select. As a side note, it's for some reason that specific template has the old SharePoint icon. You see all the other ones has like different colors. Not sure why that is. Just thought I'll call that out. Doesn't be a problem for us in any way. So I'm going to go and click on complete that as custom action for the selected item. That's the one that I'm going to select. Now when I do that, another tab opens up and it directly takes us into the Power Automate side, which is perfect. That's what we want. And so I'm now going to basically just select on continue because this you are familiar with. This is one of the preliminary steps that we see when we're actually building a Power Automate flow. So I'm just going to go and click on continue. I'll click on continue, and here we are now into this Power Automate flow section. Now, a couple of things I want you to do right off the bat over here is give this a name that's going to make sense to the users when they come back over here. They go to the item and they select this ellipsis, they go to Power Automate flow. They're going to see a flow show up over here. So give it that name, a name that makes sense. So I'm actually going to say something in effect, start flow to review this item. That text just makes sense to me, but you do something that makes sense to you or your team members. That's one. Second thing is when we selected the template, two very important things happened. It went ahead and added our trigger step or the trigger action. And then after that, the next step is immediately the one that we need as well. Because what it did was it went ahead and first say, hey, for the selected item, it is for the site address and the list name. That's what we need. And then after that, it goes ahead and adds this other step, which is to go ahead and get the item. And the item, again, has the same site address, same list name, but it also goes and grabs this ID. And I love this little Power Effects function that it directly adds over here. So however on you'll see there's the trigger outputs, body, entity, ID. I'll just give you a clue that if you went ahead and actually started building this directly from scratch, which is going into Power Automate and building it, you will skip this step because it just naturally doesn't come to you because I've already gone and selected an item. Why do I need to go and get the item? See, this one step doesn't naturally come to you. We miss it, and therefore it's always best that you start building it directly from the SharePoint list and pick that correct template, because it does all the heavy lifting for you right over here. So this is neat because about 60% of the work of this flow and the logic has already been done directly by selecting the correct template. Now what I want to do is I have gotten the item that I've selected. I need to go ahead and now do something. So for that, let's actually spend a little bit of time talking about what this flow is all about. So I'll go back to the list, and here, as you've seen, you must have seen this me doing a bunch of times. You must have done something similar in the previous app in the day. There is this list called devices. This devices basically gives you information about all the different type of manufacturers, the devices where it could be an ultrabook, tablet, laptop, power laptop. Like that's the devices. And then for each of them, what is the type? It could be different models available. And then what are the specs for it? The prices, processor, memory. That's all called as my devices. Now, what I want to do is trigger a flow for a very specific device of a very specific manager, and I just want the content to be reviewed. That line item and the content, I want that to be reviewed. So I need to send it to a very specific person, and that specific person could be very dynamic because it's all tied to who is that manufacturer. So for something like that, I actually have a secondary list, and that one is called as contact for device item review. And as you can see, I've got the manufacturers, the same names that we see over here, manufacturing names right over there is the same kind name, manufacturing, their IDs, and then who is the primary and the secondary contact. So that's why I'm able to understand for a specific manufacturer, say for Acer or Dell, the primary one is Rosanna Christian, and then the secondary one is Gabriel Christian. That's how I'm getting this information. So I need this information now to go ahead and now complete my flow. So let's go back to the other tab over here. Now I'm going to click on a plus new step, and I'm going to go ahead and do get items. It is items, it is plural. The one above it is the step only for the singular get item, and that's the one that's automatically created. The one we are adding is called get items. That's the one. Now, where is this get items coming from? This get items is coming from the secondary list that I've added, contact for device item review. So let me go and grab that one. All right. So this is now my site address. The site address ends with POC. The list name is contact, so I'll just go and do contact. Yep, that's the one that I want. And now I want to make sure I pull only a specific information because I don't want to go ahead and pull all of these. I want to go and pull a very specific one. And to do that, a great way is to go and select the advanced options. And we're going to go ahead and use the filter query to actually do an OData filter. Now, OData filter of what? What I want to do is whatever was the selected item, I want to go ahead and get that specific manufacturer and that device. And once I get that device, go ahead and actually get the entire row of that. So it's important that we actually go and know what these columns are in the secondary list and also what the columns are in the primary one. And in our case, they are pretty much the exact same, so it's becoming very easy. But let me actually go and fill out the OData one. So in the OData one, my information is going to be go ahead and get from the get items. I want to go ahead and grab now this manufacturing ID. And that manufacturing ID needs to equal what? It needs to equal this MFR ID from the secondary list, all right? So it's getting the manufacturer ID. This is the one from the primary one, and it's going ahead and matching it from the secondary one. Now for the secondary one, I don't have them over here in my dynamic content. I have to go ahead and type that in. So here it is MFR ID. Now I'm typing this in because I know it, but in your case, if you're not exactly sure, go to that secondary list. In the secondary list, go on the top right to the gear settings, click on list settings. In the list settings, the MFR ID, you see it over there. It makes sense, but to be exactly sure, click on it. Click on it, and on the top right, you will exactly see what that field name is, MFR ID. That's the one. I could literally just come over here, go ahead and highlight the whole thing, do a Control C, come back to my flow, and over here in my filter query, I can paste it, and that's how I get the exact name. Because sometimes if you may have put a space, you may get a whole different name, which may not be as clear as this. So always go to the SharePoint list, the column, and get that exact column name. All right, so now I've actually gone and done this. Now what I'll do is I'll go and click on save, and I now can go ahead and get the specific item that I want. So the next step now, all I have to do is go ahead and send out an Outlook email. So I'll just go and type in Outlook, and in my Outlook, I'll select for Office 365 Outlook because my Outlook is online. And over here, I'm going to do a send. So this is going to be a send an email V2. I'll click on that. And then here, I need to now go ahead and make sure I get the names of the people from this secondary list. because these are the ones, the primary and the secondary one who's responsible. They are the ones that I want to go ahead and send that information in. So for that, now it's pretty simple. We are already getting the secondary and the primary from the get items. So for here, I'll go ahead and now click on switch to advanced mode. And I'm going to make sure that I'm seeing the correct one. Get items, that's the get items. So I'm going to go and select the primary contact email. Then it automatically goes and does an apply to each. Now don't get worried about this, don't freak out. This is automatic. You didn't do anything wrong. Now Power Automate is smart enough to say that, hey, Daniel just did a get items call on the step above, which means over here, it's quite possible that there is more. So let's just automatically go and put that into an apply to each. It's really smart. But in our case, even though it is a get items, we know that only one data is coming because we went and did the OData filter query. So don't worry about this apply to each. It's not going to make any mistakes. It's not going to send out any duplicate emails. Only one will still go out. But what we need to do is I'm going to come back now to our to field, click on a semicolon, because you know the semicolons is how Outlook works when multiple emails are going in. And there I'll go ahead and click on the secondary contact email. Now, one concern and confusion we have is that, hey, first time Daniel clicked primary contact email, it didn't apply to each. Now, if I click the secondary contact email, is it going to do an apply to each inside an apply to each? No, it's not going to do that. I know it's a good thought. If you had it, your wheels are turning, you're thinking in the right way. But Power Automate is smart enough. It only does this once. And therefore, the second time when I went and selected a field, an item, it didn't put an apply to each inside the apply to each. Make sense? Good. All right. So then after that, I'm just going to go and put in some text. I'm going to say, please review item whose MFR is, and I'll just go and select the manufacturer. And then here, let's go and put in some more text. I'll say hi. And for the hi, now I'm going to select the primary contact display name. And I'm also going to go and say secondary contact display name. Okay. And then I'll go and put in the comma. I'll say a request has come in to view the information of the following device. Now for the manufacturer, I already know the manufacturer, so I'll select that over here. I'll put in some other text as well because I want to go and get it from the device. Well, so right over here, now I can go and say device. The device is coming from the get item, which is perfect. So I'll select the get item. Price, let me go and grab that price as well. The price is coming from, again, the get item, which is price. Next, processor is also over here. And let me go and do a search for memory. So right there, memory as well. Okay, so it's basically just giving a heads up to the primary and secondary owner that you need to go ahead and do this, all right? So I'm going to go and click on save now. Now, remember, we'll be coming back over here to tweak a few things, going ahead and changing the run as, going ahead and changing the Outlook. But speaking of run as, the way we created this flow, it is for a selected item. So if I now go just one step back to the previous page, because we went ahead and used that SharePoint specific type, which is the run from the selected item, you will now see on the run only users on the bottom right. And it's important that you understand this because this is another question that comes up is, hey, Daniel, I went ahead and built this flow. I want to do a specific run only for users. I'm not seeing that option. And I hate to say this to you, but this feature doesn't work for everything else. It only works for very specific types of actions and triggers that you use. In our case, for SharePoint selected item or SharePoint selected file, both of those will go ahead and get you this run only feature. So remember that, don't get confused. It is tied to a very specific action types and triggers. Okay, so we went ahead and built the flow. It was just a few simple steps, but the ultimate test is let's go back to the original list. And in the list, just to be safe, I'll go ahead and do a refresh. Now, do I see that item level flow? Well, let's find out. So I'm going to go ahead and now randomly select any one of these items, click on the ellipses, go to the automate, and in my automate, any second now, I should see, there you go, the start flow to review this item. See why it's so important to go ahead and name that flow exactly what you'll see over here. It just makes sense, right? Because exactly, you should see something over here that makes sense, not go ahead and say first attempt flow version 2. No, that's going to show up over here. Users are not going to know what it is. That's why the naming is so important. But there you go. It showed up directly over here. And this is where the most confusions happen, is that people go ahead and build the flow. They don't see it show up over here. So use the process, the steps that I'm showing you, only then does the actual flow show up over here. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Let's go ahead and do a test. So I'm now going to come and I'm going to click on start flow to review this item. A little sidebar shows up on the right side. It will go ahead and now do the run flow. It verifies a couple of things like any other running of the flow. It'll go ahead and confirm my sign in authentication. It's making sure that I do have the SharePoint list because that's one of the connectors we use, the Office 365 list. And then I can go and click on continue. In the continue, the next step shows up, and over here, I can go and now run the flow. This will show up every single time. But there's a section over here that you might have overlooked. It is review connections and actions. So if you go and click this, it actually right over here directly in the sidebar shows you what actions and direct the connections that you use. I found this very useful. Just thought I'll point that out. So we're going to go back, and now I'm going to click on run a flow. Now the flow immediately goes ahead and runs, and it is going ahead and making sure that the selected item is there. So I'll go back to my original flow, the one that we just built. I'll go ahead and click on refresh. And since this is all happening live, let's make sure that it ran successfully, or if there's any errors, we'll go ahead and troubleshoot that. So always the first flow just ran, it ran 23 seconds ago, which is perfect. It was successful, which means that if I now go ahead and open up my Outlook, and I'll go into my inbox, right in my inbox, right over here, that's the first one that I see. I'm able to go and see this email that came in, and it is correct. It went directly to Daniel Christian, and it went to Rosanna Christian. So it's coming in directly, perfectly, and it is working now. So what I want to do is I've gone ahead and built this flow. The flow ran successfully, but there are going to be other people who will go ahead and see this flow. So I need to start sharing this with those other people as well. And that's where we go and start leveraging the run only users functionality that is available in Power Automate, and that's what it is. So let's focus on this one now. So the SharePoint list item level flow is available to me, but I am the maker of the flow. Our goal now is to go ahead and start sharing this with other users. So for example, this is Finn Christian, completely separate account altogether. As you can see, I've signed in over there. But if Finn comes in now to the same site, the same list, and I go on Power Automate, I don't see that flow show up over here. I don't see it because what? We haven't shared this with Finn over here. And so that's where we need to go and now go back, sign in as the original user, which was Dan Christian. I was the one who actually went and made it. And over here, we start leveraging the run only users. So let's do that. Click on edit, and in the edit, it's going to slide off another section over here. And on the top, you've got two options. You've got users and groups, and you also have SharePoint. We'll take a look at SharePoint in a section. So what this allows is let others run this flow and see the results, but not edit in any way. What it's trying to say is that, hey, you are going to allow others to run this flow, but those others do not have access to go ahead and edit and manipulate the flow. I like that it is explaining this over here in layman's terms, because let's face it, this can be confusing that, hey, I just want people to run it, not to go ahead and edit the flow and everything. And the answer to that is no, it doesn't allow you to do that. All it does is going ahead and allowing people to run it, which in our case, if we go ahead and now add in Finn over here, Finn's name shows up, and I want it such that when Finn goes to the SharePoint list and he goes ahead and selects on the Power Automate, I want the start flow to review this item show up over there. And this will do that. So I'll go and click on save because I'm adding an individual user, which is Finn Christian over there. Now it is giving me some other options. By the way, when it added it, the name showed up over here. Remember previously this was completely blank. Now it's giving me some other options. So I click on edit. Over here it is saying, hey, enter names, emails, or user groups. So you can also do this at a group level. But a really neat feature that you should be aware of is also on the SharePoint. And I love this because I can see myself needing this directly because the connector is SharePoint. So let's see this. What it does is only gives you very simple answers. It's first of all telling me what is the site options you have available. Well, there's only one site because remember, regardless of which list it was, the actual list that you've tied over here, or even that secondary list, they're all part of that same site. Therefore, we only see one site option. So I'll go and select that. After that, it went ahead and gave us two lists. Well, why two lists? Well, if you think about it, when we built that flow, there were actually two lists tied to it. Remember the one which was the original devices and the other ones were the contact for the devices. Because there were two types of lists tied and built inside the flow actions, that is why you actually see the two lists over here. So I really love it because they've kind of, for lack of a better term, dumb it down for us so that now we don't make a mistake. Now, granted, we just have to be a little smart to figure out which is the list that we need to select. So in our case, it is the devices one because that's where users are going to go and select it. So you could do it either one of the ways as far as sharing goes. You can go and do it at a user or a group level by adding them individually, or make it completely dynamic by saying, hey, I don't want to add anything users. I just know that anybody who will be using the SharePoint list is the one who needs to come over here and select all of this. So if anybody has access to the SharePoint list, they by default should have access to this Power Automate flow. And therefore, I just love the SharePoint option as well. So you can go ahead and do just that, select it, add, and it directly saves it and dynamically gives people access to that. A very important feature that you should be aware of. But now I've gone ahead and given Finn action over here. So I'm going to go back now into Finn's account, signed in as Finn, see on the right. Before we could not see it, I'll just go and do a refresh. And when I do a refresh, I'll again go ahead and randomly select another one. There you go. I've selected that. I'm going to click on Power Automate. And right now, there you go. It shows up. Start flow to review this item. Remember, it wasn't there before. Now I see it. So I'll click on it. And this process shows up over here. A little window slides up from the right. It's confirming that saying, hey, this is a run flow. These are the steps that you will see again and again. It's not a one-time thing. Unfortunately, you do see that again and again. I'll click on continue. I'll click on run flow. The flow is running. See on the left side, by the way, it's doing a running circle over there. So it's go ahead and finish this. Now for this specific one, it is the manufacturer's name is Acer. So if I go to the Acer and if I take a look at it, you see the Acer's primary and secondary contact is Daniel and Rosanna Christian, which means I should be the one getting the email. So right over here, you see that email, the email which is from the flow that Finn triggered. And the email came in directly from Finn. So you see a little confusion over here because when Daniel triggered it, it came from Daniel Christian. But when Finn triggered it, it did not come from Daniel. Even though Daniel created the original connector, Daniel went ahead and created the flow. When Finn triggered it, it directly came from Finn's account. And that is the overall fundamental understanding of how connectors work. Is connectors are tied to the user and their user's authentication. Now, granted, we did go ahead and do the run only, but we are allowing the people to run the flow. We are still using a connection tied to directly the user, which in this case is Finn Christian. And so it's for situations like these where we need to now learn two more things. One is, first of all, if I didn't want this to come from Finn, I want to make sure that it only comes, first of all, from Daniel Christian. How do I make that happen? So for that, we got to go back into directly what Daniel did is I went ahead and did this. It's my flow. I'm the original maker or the owner of the flow. For that, we go back again to run only users, click on edit. This is where we went ahead and gave the user, Finn, access to go ahead and do all of this creation. But there's an additional step we can do, and that is right over here. You see in the Outlook 365 Outlook, it says provided by run only user. What that means is that when we were triggering this flow, the connection to use the Outlook 365 Outlook was using Finn's connection. Now, does it make sense that when we actually went and saw the email that came in from Finn, it came in from Finn's account. It didn't come in from Daniel's account. So watch this. If I now go back over here and I'm going to switch over to changing the provided by run only user and go and say, use this connection, which is Daniel Christian's original connection for this flow. If I go and do this, now it's going to say users will run only access will not control or have access to these connections outside of this flow. This is not a warning. This is actually telling you with a peace of mind that, hey, even though you are the one triggering the flow and you're using Daniel's connector, don't be alarmed. You only have access to this connection inside this flow. You cannot go ahead and have access to this outside the flow. That's all it is telling you, and that's a good thing. And so that's why I want to make sure I explain that to you. So I'm going to click on OK, and I'll go and click on Save. And then after I've done Save, it says that this changed settings for all run-only users. Perfect. Now Finn has got this access. So let's do another test. As Finn, let's go and sign in as Finn. Let's go ahead and now pick up another one of them. And I'll go ahead and now trigger another flow manually. Start this flow. It will go through the entire same process because this is the one, it's not a one-time only. It goes multiple times. So I'm going to select that. Now guess what? Because we are using somebody else's account, which is in this case is Daniel Christian, the option of the connections for Outlook is no longer there. If you go and rewind back and we triggered this the first time, you will see that Outlook was there before, but now it's only SharePoint. Very important things that I wanted to show you because these are subtle things that people notice and they have questions about. That's why I wanted to explain it to you step by step. So I click on continue now. Secondary thing comes up. That's fine. I'll click on run flow. Immediately it went through. It is for the Acer. For the Acer, we know that the primary and the secondary owner, one of them is Daniel. So it's going to be emailed to Daniel. So let me go back in. Let me go look over here. And right now you see over here, the second time we send the email, second time Finn went and triggered the email, now the email is coming in directly from Daniel Christian, just like it was there before. It's no longer coming from Finn. Now do you see how that run as works? So let's not just stop over here, because I know what some of you are thinking. You says, man, it is still tied to the owner of this flow. How can I go ahead and change this to, say, a service account? Well, that's the last part of this video. Is now we want to go ahead and change the Outlook connectors connection altogether and put it to another account. And so for that, I actually have a service account. I know what the service account's username is. I know what the service account's password is. I know the credentials. So I'm now going to sign in again directly as me, Daniel Christian. I'm going to come in over here. We're going to go now into the edit form of the flow, the original flow that we built. I'll come in directly over here. And now for that last connection, which is the Outlook step, all right, the last step, I'm going to click over here and I'm going to say add a new connection. Now in the new connection, this authentication is opening up. Now, a couple of important things over here. I have not signed in as that service account. I didn't have to give that service account access to this flow, none of that. I just made sure that the original maker of the flow, which is me, has the credentials of that service account. Okay, that's the important thing. And that service account needs to have a mailbox. So I'll come in over here and I'm going to go and type in that service account. So there you go, the service account's credentials, sign in is do not reply. So I'll go and click on next. I got to go and put in the password. I actually already have it saved. So I'll just go ahead and say, I'm going to put the password. I'll click on sign in. It's asking me for all of this. I'll say, yeah, I'll ask me later. So I've gone and authentication is completed. Just want to verify something. Once again, I click on the ellipsis and now I can go and see the service account information is over here. So now I'm just making sure I'll go and click on save. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and sign in as Finn and do a test. All right. So now I know what some of you are thinking, but let me do the test over here. All right. So I'm going to now again make sure I'm just in the Acer one. So I'll just select something else. Signed in as Finn just to confirm that. Click over here. Go to automate, start the flow, running it in over directly. And I have to go ahead and now, yes, click on continue. Everything is good. Run the flow. The flow is running. Again, it is for the Acer. The primary and secondary is Daniel Christian. So let me sign in again as Daniel Christian. Go to the mailbox. And it went ahead and added Finn again. So what changed? Well, let's go ahead and see the run only users. So I'm going to go back now directly into that mail. I'm going to sign out of that directly. And now in the run only user, I'll click on the edit. And right over here in the Office 365 Outlook, because we made a change to that action for Outlook, it went ahead and updated the users and groups as well. So in a way, it's actually a good thing because now I was going to come back over here anyway. I'm going to click on that. And now I'm not going to use Daniel Christian. I'm going to use do not reply. I'll select that. It's going to give me that message again. You and I know what that means. I'll click on OK. I'll click on save. All right, so it's going ahead and saving it. Now for the third and the final time, let's go and run this again as Finn and we will get the answer that we want. So I'll go back in again as Finn. I'll just make sure that I stick somewhere in the Acer category right there. Selected, do a automate, start to review, clicked on that. We'll go ahead and go through these steps over here. All is good. Remember, again, the Outlook disappeared because why? The went in and did a run as to a different account. So I'll click on continue, clicking on continue, click on run only flow. The flow should trigger off immediately, go successful, but we need to go and sign in directly to Daniel's mailbox because he is one of the primary owners. And any second now, there we go. See, previously it was Finn Christian, but now it is do not reply. So you see we succeeded with two different things. We first of all, inside the original flow, right over here, inside the original flow, went ahead and changed it to a new connector altogether, new Outlook connector. And then in the run users only, we had to tweak it. We had to now say, hey, Outlook's run only is going to be the service account. And we successfully got that done such that now when that flow is triggered, it is not coming in through the original flow maker's mailbox. It is directly coming in to the service account. And therefore, there is no confusion on that. So is it all beginning to make sense now? Because we covered some very important points to follow this process. Because first of all, we've walked through how to build a SharePoint list item level flow, how to build that. And that's one of the places where you can actually leverage the run users only functionality. But when we use the run users only functionality in the flow, I showed you which actions this can be. And then in the run users, I showed you ways to share it. You can do it at a user level, the group level, or even how to go ahead and use the existing SharePoint list, making sure that you select the correct SharePoint list. And then after that, even though when you make the changes, the original user who triggered the flow, that's the person who's getting the email. And even with the email, when the original person who triggers the flow, even though the email goes to somebody else, but that's coming from the original trigger person's email address. And we wanted to change that. So I showed you how to change the Outlook connectors connection with different username, different password, which in our case was a service account, and then how to go back again to the run only, make the change, and then the emails were going out exactly how it planned. Very important step-by-step process. I planned it this way to teach you. Hopefully this is useful to you. Hopefully now you can build your SharePoint item levels or SharePoint file levels one using the run only functionalities and making sure everything just makes sense. So hopefully this video was useful to you, and as always, keep using Power Automate. Hello, hello, hello. So if you like this video, go ahead and click on that subscribe button and smash that like button. Also, if you have a few extra seconds, can you go ahead and put in a comment? Either say something nice or give me ideas for my next video. And until then, see ya.